Good afternoon. This is Mike Port, the Superintendent of Little Rock Public Schools, and I have Dr. John with us today from the University of Arkansas Medical Center. And I'm very excited and honored that you would take the time to be with us. This is intentional in terms of trying to find a way to better support our community. But we're looking at this to maybe it could be a support to beyond the Little Rock walls. And we have a kind of a rare talent and an opportunity to have Dr. John with us today. Now I want to share that throughout this video there will be times where information will be presented on the screen that can help guide you to resources and materials to support the exact things we're talking about today. There's resources on our Little Rock School District website. I'm very proud of, in this district, our mental health program and mental health support with Lisa Williams directing that is really top-notch, and we have a very good website. Additionally, your university, the University of Arkansas Medical Center, has a lot of tools and resources that we also will post.
Great.
So, Dr. John, I'm going to start off with just some basics. How does someone become a psychologist, and what drove you to that?
Through so much school is my first answer to that question. But, when I first took my first psychology class in college, the way we really learned about mental health was through stories from families that were going through mental health difficulties. And I remember that the story that was there for post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, was the story of a 6-year-old child whose daycare was right down the road from 9/11. And I remember that story being so impactful to me because I had never really thought about kids, really young kids, experiencing such significant behavioral and emotional difficulties and how powerless this child's parents felt to change that, to be able to help with those kinds of challenges. And so I think it started a fire in me to become a clinical psychologist, and in what seems like tens and tens of years later in schooling, I'm now a clinical psychologist at University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences who really specializes in treating post-traumatic stress and adjustment-related difficulties in children and adolescents.
Well, you just shared something that we talk about in our district a lot with our leaders is you have to have a why. And so your why really was driven by young people to try to go find that level of support right off the bat.
Absolutely.
Now, how did Little Rock and how did UAMS become so fortunate to receive your talent? How did that happen?
So as part of your graduate degree, the last year of your PhD is really a capstone clinical experience which students travel all across the country to be able to receive. And so I did my graduate work in Southern Illinois, and when I was looking for internship programs, I wanted an academic medical center. So basically an institution that does research but really focuses on how to improve clinical care at the ground level. And I also wanted a place that specialized in trauma and really understood what are best practices relating to supporting people through really challenging and difficult events. And UAMS was that place for me.
You know what's interesting, and you being a person that has moved in from out of state and into the city, I did the same.
Yeah.
I often think about Little Rock, and oftentimes we don't realize what a wonderful city we have and what support systems we have and what opportunities we have. And obviously the University Medical Center is just huge in terms of what it does for this entire state.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, as I was looking through different programs, the setup we have here through UAMS is truly unique, and now I lecture across the country on these principles, and a lot of people ask me, like, how is Arkansas doing this? And I think it's through a lot of different systems, whether it be through the educational system, whether it be through child welfare, have a really strong investment in mental health and in understanding how do we address mental health difficulties, particularly in children. So I couldn't agree with you more. This is a place that really takes this issue seriously, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Well, and the other thing that I think we often downplay or don't recognize as the strength of our community is I reached out to you, and the answer was immediate. It was, yes, I want to help. And I think I found that in my 10 years now here in Arkansas that people are always ready to help and support. These are challenging times.
Yeah.
And there's the pandemic, obviously, that we're dealing with. We had the racial strife, and that started this summer, and it's still smoldering in some cases. And then we have the holidays that often are a challenging time period. How can you help, especially adults, recognize someone that might need support, either that could be another adult or even a child?
This is a good question, Mike, and one that we get a lot. And one of the first things that comes to my mind is we can't rely on other people to show us that they need help, because a lot of times the way people act and behave when they're under stress is to withdraw, is to go in. And the pandemic only makes that worse, because you're not really seeing people out in the community. You're not engaging with them in the same way. And so what I encourage people to always do is to proactively reach out to people you're working with, people that you love, and ask the genuine, how are you doing? I think we're all used to the how are you doing of, I'm doing great, life's busy, but we're managing. But I think when we can give genuine answers to other people's questions, it opens the door for them to realize, oh, we're not just asking how are you doing as a segue into the topic we're actually going to talk about. I'm genuinely asking you, how are you doing in the midst of everything that's going on?
So we can all take a bit of that, probably, and own that. And I know that I can even catch myself sometimes asking, well, how are you doing? But I'm really trying to get to what that
right?
next thing is.
Yeah.
Is there something that you would help us in terms of that type of questioning, of going just that little bit deeper?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I'm a big fan of what I call in the therapist office decoding yourself. Basically what that means is, if this is what I want to convey to you, I'm just going to come out and say it. And so it might sound like, I'm going to ask you how you're doing, and I actually want the real answer. I don't want the answer that's going to segue us into our next topic. I want us to pause, because life is hard right now. And another strategy is, and model that. I'm struggling right now. We were just talking before this started. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old right now that I'm trying to parent in the middle of a pandemic. And so when people ask me how I'm doing, I can model that, I'm going to give you a genuine answer that will hopefully let you know I'm in it to hear how you're genuinely doing.
Well, you shared a really good example with your own child, a pre-K within the Little Rock School District, and you haven't seen that classroom yet. And so you think about that, of how that would be a stressor for a parent, and might even be something that lingers for a little bit, of just, within someone. And it's almost like we have to kind of look a couple layers deeper with everyone to try to understand what's going on, because there's no cookie cutter, is there?
No, there's not. And, I tell people all the time that this pandemic, we're all in this storm together, but we are not all in the same boat. What builds people's boats in this storm are things like food insecurity, housing insecurity, things like I have to work and parent at the same time, things like I'm a part of a community that's been under attack for a long time, and those things are being paid attention to in a different way in this atmosphere. And so I think it's always helpful for people to keep that in mind, that even if I'm making it through in this way, someone else in a different boat might not be able to weather the storm this way.
So we kind of covered at least a start anyway of what it means to maybe look at supporting someone else. Look more now, if there's an individual watching today that says, I'm struggling, I know I'm struggling. What are influences, or what influences our ability to learn social, emotional skills that help us function better? What are some of those influences?
Yeah, I tell people a lot, if you thought you had diabetes, you'd probably ask your doctor about it, because there are strategies to manage diabetes. No one should be managing that without the care of a doctor, right? But when we then think about that example with depression, for example, is that I'm feeling down or irritable and agitated, which is a really common symptom of depression that I think people don't realize all the time. But I'm just not feeling like myself. Why deprive yourself of the opportunity to work on that with a doctor who specializes in that work, just like you would manage your diabetes? And so what I tell people is most of the time you have a gut instinct that something's not right, either with yourself or with someone else. And you've learned to kind of quiet that instinct down, to just barrel ahead and keep moving through life. And perhaps the COVID pandemic has made it so you can't do that anymore. You can't just barrel through it anymore the way you were before. And I would encourage people to not feel like they need to do this alone. There are so many ways we know how to help people.
And I know that one of the resources that UAMS provides is something called AR Connect.
Absolutely.
And it's a free resource that helps do a little bit of that, doesn't it? To
Absolutely.
Just kind of check in and see what you may need to do as a next step.
Mm-hmm. Anyone can call in, absolutely. And when they do, they'll talk to a trained personnel who will help troubleshoot in the moment, but will also let you know, I think you might benefit from having a more routine person to talk to about this, and let me help you get that connection. And so even if it's a wondering, explore the wondering. The worst that's going to happen is you're going to hear, you know what, you're doing just fine, and that might feel better, just to know that someone's checked me out and I'm doing okay.
Now, we have, almost 3,500 employees that are part of Little Rock School District, and 1,900 of those folks are teachers. Why are teachers so important in the development of social emotional skills in children?
I mean, I cannot underscore how important teachers are in promoting these skills for children. And there's a couple reasons why. First is that children really learn these techniques within the context of relationships. Okay, that's actually where they need to learn how to do things like empathize with others, control their emotions and behaviors, problem solve when things are challenging. And the bulk of time children spend with adults is in the classroom. I tell parents this all the time. My kid's pre-K teacher spends more waking hours with him in the week than I do as a working parent. And so teachers have such a marvelous opportunity to teach these skills to children through their everyday interactions. It doesn't mean it's easy work, though, but it is exceptionally important.
So do you have some advice for teachers to just deepen their tool belt for that type of work with children?
Yeah, I think in many ways, adults set the tone for an environment in which learning can occur. And so usually what I tell people, the first step is figure out how do I get myself in the right mindset to teach someone else this work, okay? We talk about techniques of composure, basically. If I'm really angry, frustrated, tired, worn out, when something happens in my environment, I'm probably not going to respond to that with the same tool belt I could if I had a moment to relax and cool off, right? But unfortunately, teachers are in a really uniquely difficult environment in COVID, in which I imagine they're experiencing so many stressors that everyday parents are not having to think about. And so for me, the first step is working with teachers on, are you aware of your own feelings?
So be in touch themselves.
Exactly, when you need a break, are you balanced? Where you have enough going on outside the classroom or within your school community and peers to support you? And then finally, are you connected? Do you have support in your environment in order to do the good work you want to? Because when people are aware, balanced, and connected, they are most likely able to teach children the skills that we want them to have.
That's really powerful, and it fits so well into some things we try to do well. And one is that collaboration and teaming piece. We're constantly talking about that. I know educators that are listening to this are saying, "Oh, there he goes again." But it really, no one should feel like they're doing the work by themselves. And then second, the idea of just having that balance too. And I think that's probably been a struggle for probably every educator, Little Rock, the state, our country, that they're working so many hours. Trying to do this right because it's important. They know it's important for kids, and they're having to extend their hours. But then it kind of goes back in. You still got to find that time to have that break, right? And you still got to find time to collaborate. Otherwise, you're going to dry up. I don't know if that's a good term, but
oh, absolutely. I think about it as you have a cup that only can take so much, okay? And children have these tiny, tiny little cups, and it's up to the adults in their life to catch what spills over. But who's caring for that adult's cup? So that way when that teacher spills over, do they have a group of teachers that can sit with them? Do they have a principal? Do they have a superintendent who thinks about these things and can support that development? And so usually when the conversation of self-care comes up, inside, I can't control that little scoffiness that happens in my brain that's like, psh, who has the time to take care of themselves, right? But we don't want to be sending that message to ourselves or our children, that it's not glamorous to be so overworked that you can't function in your life. That's not something we should be wearing as a badge of honor, meaning that we're doing good work just because we're overworked. And so I think for me, when I think about self-care, it's not these huge, big actions. It's these everyday small moments that I can take for myself.
And this is not a question we had scripted, but in times of crisis, a lot of times the people that are handling those crisis situations sacrifice their own individual time the most.
Absolutely.
And so, whether it's a Stephen Covey approach of sharpen the saw, and sharpen the saw to me can mean just taking a warm bath, if that's your deal, to download as an educator, or taking a long walk, making sure that you read for pleasure if that's your way. But you've got to package that into your day, and you've got to do it purposefully. Otherwise, it'll get left behind.
You're so right, is that you have to do these things outside of a moment when you need them. And what's also important is in a moment when you need those skills, what are very quick things you can do or tell yourself to get in the right mindset? I'm a big fan of self mantras, things you can tell yourself in a moment to kind of change the channel and snap you into what you want to be doing. One of the ones I think about a lot is, don't take this personally. I'm not the problem, but I can be part of the solution. That to immediately snap myself out of the not again and into the I can do this, and I can probably do it better if I take a deep breath.
So when you think about then going back into working with young people, with the students of this district and the adults that we have to do that work, when they see a child that is struggling or having difficulty navigating the day or the week or whatever it might be, what would you suggest to those adults?
I think a few things. The first is to remember that we grow the most in relationships in which we feel seen and safe. And so a lot of times people are trying to solve a problem when they haven't done the foundational work of relationship building yet. And that few minutes you can take to tell a kid, great work on that. I saw you tried hard, or I'm so glad to see you today. Those are cool new shoes that you're wearing. Sometimes people think of that as a bonus instead of essential work that you need to do to set the relationship in which children can learn. I think the other is to have grace for yourself and the person you're working with. I think adults a lot of times will spend the next evening, I know teachers will definitely do this because of how much they care. They spend the rest of their evening rehashing that situation that didn't go well, right? Really beating themselves up over what they could have done differently. And I tell teachers, kids are amazing because they give you so many chances to get it right. That it can be so powerful to talk to a kid after and be like, hey, that didn't go great. I wish I would have asked you more about how you felt instead of immediately assuming I knew what was going on. Even that action is modeling to kids that we apologize when we make a mistake. And it can serve adults a reminder that if you're messing this up as an adult on a regular basis, which all of us are, let's think about then how hard these skills are to learn. So the next time we have a kid in our classroom who keeps messing up, can we go, I see you because I keep messing up too. So I'm going to have more patience for you because I realize these oops moments are a natural part of learning.
In some cases, there are students that might have more extreme type things that shutting down or acting a little more aggressively. When educators see that, or even parents notice that within their child, what would you suggest?
Yeah, I think having frank conversations about what you're seeing is so important. Teachers have a wealth of information about how children are doing in the day, and also a lot of comparison points. They've seen a lot of children go through this similar thing. And so if you're identifying a kid who has excessive needs, who has certain emotions or behaviors that make it really difficult for them to stay in the classroom present and engaged in learning, that can be a flag for we might need a mental health evaluation. We might need to talk to our school counselor or our pediatrician or our local community mental health center about, again, getting it checked out. Because when we know more about a child, that just opens up new ways and more effective ways to help them in the classroom.
Well, and I know you have some resources on the website that we're going to be sharing that talks about how adults can get into the right headspace, I think is the term.
Yeah.
So say more a little bit about that.
Sure. So the human brain is a fascinating thing in which when we are high on emotions, we are low on thinking. So think about the last time you were panicked because you were going to miss your flight and you were late to the airport. Is that the moment that if I gave you a math problem, you'd be like solid, you'd be doing your business, right? Absolutely not. We know that emotions take over our brains and they make it really hard for the part of our brain that does thinking, planning, reasoning, organization. That part's not online when we are really activated and emotional. And so the first step is usually to turn your own temperature down, because then you can be in the mode where that brain space gets activated again and you can actually be effective.
I like that. Turn the temperature down a little bit to give yourself some room to really take in what's... Huh. That's awesome. When you think of building up social emotional skills, either for an adult or a child or for a parent working with a child, I don't know which framework you want to do, but what would be the advice or the places that you'd send people to continue to kind of expand that mindset? Because I think, like you said, we're all going to face this. I mean, we're all going to have some form of challenges. There are economic challenges. There's the health challenges that our community is going through. There's going to be economic challenges. You name it.
Mm-hmm. You know, now more than ever, there are so many resources available with a quick Google that I think 50 years ago people would have been struggling with. How do I build this skill set in myself? In preparing for our meeting today, I thought it would be kind of funny. I was like, what if I just Googled this, right? What if I didn't know what I know? And I went to a web page and I was like, how do I do this? Social emotional learning is a real term. It's a term that you can search on the internet that will give you resources and support. A lot of times what I tell parents and teachers is to be knowledgeable consumers. So as you're looking for a website, try looking for places that are national organizations on this work, like the National Childhood Traumatic Stress Network, NCTSN, or look for resources that are tied to a health facility, like Vanderbilt or UAMS, right? You can feel a little bit more certain that that information you're getting isn't someone just making it up on the internet, but is actually really useful and solid information to learn. And so choose your sources carefully, but the help is definitely out there.
The help is there, and no one should ever feel like they're isolated. Whether you're feeling tension within yourself or that you're feeling it with your child or your students, there's plenty of places to reach out to, especially in our school district. We've got fantastic school counselors. We've got mental health support, great partners. Again, an active website. We've got your university that's there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say I want to give a big shout out to Little Rock School District in particular is not just starting this work. I mean, there are fantastic partnerships between Little Rock School District and I think of like A-State and the work that's being done to help equip teachers with these tools, because we can't expect adults to teach what they have not been given. Just like we can't expect parents to give what they have not been given yet without training and support on how to do that. So usually when it comes to mental health, there's such a higher degree of stigma. This idea that like, what would it be like if I went to a doctor and told them I can't handle my emotions right now? there's a real concern about like what kind of person does that make me that I can't figure this out. And what I would tell you is like a normal one. Because what we know is 25% of the population at any given time has an anxiety disorder. That's 1 in 4 people. There are 4 people in this room right now, 2 of us that we can see on camera. Statistically wise, 1 of us would have a mental health disorder. Why are we not thinking of this as more than normal, than an exceptional thing people would need to get help for?
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We're kind of wrapping up, and I'm going to let you have a final thing that you might want to push out, but I want to share that, you know, this is not a one and done type issue. So this is not a video that just ends up and we're done and say, check, we did social emotional, you know, health.
Yeah.
You know, we're over with it. No. Again, you know, there's all these resources that are available on our website. We know we have school counselors that are ready to help you, teachers that were willing to be partners with parents, and teachers, we know we want to support you in every way we can. We also know that there are going to be a series of videos that will follow this over the course of the next several months. They're going to be short little snippets that you can pick up and grab a hold of to expand the depth of your understanding of social emotional wellness. How would you like to finish today?
I think the last thing is really just to encourage people to accept good enough right now. I think we're all really striving for like doing our best and 100% in everything right now. And I would encourage people to like cut yourself some slack. What we know in many ways is that good enough really is good enough. But oftentimes we let perfect be the enemy of that good enough. And so I think when we think about balance, one of the things we need to do within that search for balance is have grace for ourselves, that it's not easy every day, and I might not be doing a great job of it today, and luckily I'll have plenty of opportunities to get it a little bit more right later.
Well, Dr. John, you have a gift of being able to share some things that are very complex in a very humane and interesting way.
Thank you.
And we are very blessed to have you in this community.
Thank you.
We're very blessed to have you helping and supporting the Little Rock School District, and we also know that this video probably will go out to others, and your reach will be much farther beyond than just this city. So thank you very much for your efforts today, and we hope that all of you stay well, and staying well is physical and mental, and we all owe it to each other, don't we, to work on that together.
Absolutely. I'll close with this metaphor I like to use, that redwood trees, these really strong trees in forests, they don't become that strong by growing their roots downwards. They actually root themselves by growing their roots across and winding their roots around the roots of other trees. Because what we know is when networks are connected, they're so much better able to weather a storm. And I think sometimes we need to think of our communities like that. Instead of thinking about this as a me problem that I need to grow my roots down, grow them across. Because that's how we know we actually weather storms.
Which I'll finish with our phrase for Little Rock School District, which is called the power of us.
Yes.
And we have that, and again, we have a wonderful community, we have a strong school district, we have amazing parents. We just all need to continue to work together. I wish you all a good rest of this day, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.